Mindset Tales presents The Tigress Code, a tale of love and loyalty in a time of tyranny. Aysha learned the Tigress Code before she learned to braid her hair. After all, she was the daughter of one of the movement's leaders. Before her fingers could tame loose strands into orderly plaits, they were taught to trace the words carved into stone at the heart of the camp. The code was recited at dawn and dusk, spoken first by the elders and then echoed by the youngest voices, imperfect but earnest. "Choice is the spine of freedom," the elders said. "No bond taken by force can ever be sacred." To the Tigresses, these were not ideals. They were laws older than any crown. A tigress did not kneel because she was commanded. She knelt because she willed it. She did not follow because she was owned. She followed because she believed. Love, loyalty, even leadership were offerings freely given and freely withdrawn if trust was broken. The tribe was not bound by blood alone, though many were born into it. Others came wounded from the outside world. Women who had fled unwanted marriages, daughters who refused inheritance chains disguised as duty, warriors who would not swear obedience to men who mistook strength for dominance. The Tigresses took them all, if they chose the code, and the code chose them in return. They were warriors when they must be, hunters when they needed to be, healers always. Children learned to track before they learned to write, to listen before they learned to speak. Strength was celebrated, but never demanded. Even the fiercest among them understood that force, without consent, was emptiness. For generations, the world beyond their forested highlands had tolerated them. Merchants spoke of the Tigresses in half-myths and lowered voices. Some called them witches, others Amazons, others simply dangerous women who refused to know their place. But so long as the tribe kept to the highlands, so long as they did not bend the knee to kings or interfere with the lull in politics, they were allowed to exist, misunderstood, mistrusted, but unchallenged. Then King Marek took the throne. Marek had risen on promises of order. Borders tightened under his rule. Laws multiplied. Everything was to be named, classified, owned. A people who lived beyond hierarchy, who allowed women to choose their bonds and deny men authority over them, were an affront to the very structure of his power. He called the Tigresses a provocation, a contagion, a stain on order. From his marble halls came edicts written in cold ink. The Tigress Code was declared heresy. Any woman claiming its protection was deemed lawless. Any who aided them were traitors. His soldiers were granted rights of seizure, of imprisonment, and worse. The word submission appeared often in his decrees, dressed in the language of morality. The Tigresses answered with silence at first, then with resistance. Ambushes along mountain passes. Supply lines severed. Scouts vanished into the trees and were never seen again. The tribe did not seek open war, but they would not scatter like prey. Every tigress understood that survival now meant defiance. Aysha had been on a ridge at dawn when the horn sounded. 3 sharp notes. Close. Urgent. Wrong. She turned even before the echo faded, heart already pounding, and ran. By the time she reached the lower camp, smoke was threading through the trees like black veins. Tents burned. Steel rang against steel. Shouts split the air. Orders barked in unfamiliar voices, cries of pain in voices she knew too well. She fought her way through the chaos, calling Ilsa's name until her throat burned. Ilsa was gone. Ilsa, who laughed softly, as if joy were a secret she shared only with those she trusted. Ilsa, who fought fiercely, her movements precise and unshowy, deadly in their calm. Ilsa, whose hand Aysha had taken beneath a moon-white sky and never let go of again, not in battle, not in fear, not in doubt. Ilsa, who had chosen Aysha freely, as Aysha had chosen her. A wounded scout found a piece of her gown near the fallen watchtower, blood on the sleeve and on the hem. The lookout told her what had happened.
They took prisoners, alive.
The words struck harder than any blade. Captured by the king's forces. Not killed.
Claimed.
Aysha stood very still as the meaning settled in her bones. Marek did not only want the Tigresses gone, he wanted them broken, displayed as proof that choice itself could be conquered. And Aysha knew, with a clarity that frightened her, that the war had just become personal. By nightfall, the truth reached them through whispered channels. Scouts moved like ghosts between camps, trading fragments of information in murmurs meant only for trusted ears. A bribe paid here, a deserter cornered there, a sympathetic servant in a roadside inn. Each piece sharpened the picture until it could no longer be denied. Ilsa had been taken alive, not executed as a rebel, not thrown into the labor pits.
Claimed.
The word passed through the Tigresses like a blade through cloth. Alive meant leverage. Alive meant spectacle. One of the warriors reported bitterly, her jaw tight with barely contained rage.
She is to be married, given to one of Marek's captains. A reward, a lesson.
She spat into the fire.
It will be public, witnessed, a breaking of the code, staged so all can see what happens to women who refuse obedience.
A forced bond, a stolen vow. Marek did not simply want Ilsa. He wanted the Tigresses to watch one of their own stripped of choice, turned into proof that even their most sacred law could be violated. Aysha felt something cold and bright settle behind her ribs. Not grief, not panic. Focus. It was the same feeling she had before battle, when fear burned away and left only intention. Her hands curled slowly into fists as the fire crackled and the night pressed close. Aysha said through gritted teeth.
They will not have her.
Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the murmurs like steel drawn from a sheath. Every tigress nearby turned toward her. Some saw fury. Others saw something more dangerous, certainty. The elders argued caution, as elders must. Karth was not a border fort or a caravan town. It was the fortress city of the crown itself, stone piled upon stone, walls thick enough to swallow arrows whole, iron gates, watched day and night. Its streets were patrolled by men sworn to Marek alone. Its dungeons were said to have no windows, only lessons. An elder warned her gravely.
No tigress has ever walked its halls and returned. We cannot lose you too.
Aysha listened. She respected them, but she did not yield. Neither did she ask permission.
This is not a raid, it is a retrieval.
Before dawn, she prepared herself in silence. She took her blades, balanced, familiar extensions of her hands. She slung her bow across her back, fletching dark to drink in shadow. Last, she drew the small tiger tooth charm from her pouch. Ilsa had pressed it into her palm years ago, smiling as if it were nothing, eyes bright with meaning.
So you never forget I chose you.
She would not forget. She would not allow the world to forget. The city of Karth rose from the plains like a clenched fist, defiant and unyielding, its towers black against the sky. Aysha circled it for a day and a night, watching, listening, learning. She memorized the cadence of the guard steps, the changing of shifts, the blind spots where torchlight faltered. Patience was her ally, fury her fuel. She slipped inside with the rain, scaling stone where moss softened the climb, moving when thunder masked sound. Within the city, she became a shadow among shadows, a rumor of movement just beyond the edge of sight. The holding wing lay beneath the eastern keep, where guests were kept until their compliance was ensured. The irony tasted bitter in her mouth. These were not guests. They were trophies awaiting polish. She found Ilsa in a narrow cell, wrists bruised, lips split, but standing tall. When Ilsa looked up and saw her, the breath left her in a quiet, shaking exhale. Her eyes were still sharp, still defiant, still hers.
You came? I knew you would.
Aysha stepped closer to the bars, lowering her forehead until it nearly touched the cold iron.
Always. Was there ever any doubt?
And in those words was a promise, stronger than stone walls, stronger than kings, stronger than fear. The escape was chaos. It began with a breath held too long, with Aysha's fingers closing around a ring of stolen keys slick with sweat. A guard turned at the wrong moment, just enough time for Aysha to step into his shadow and strike, precise and merciless. He crumpled without a sound, armor whispering as he fell. Then the door was opened, and Ilsa was free. A shout rang out behind them, surprise turning into alarm. Steel scraped from scabbards. A bell clanged once, then twice, then erupted into a frenzy of sound that echoed through stone and bone alike. The reunited lovers ran. Torchlight flared along the corridors, casting walls into wild motion. Soldiers poured from side passages, boots pounding, voices colliding in confusion. Aysha met the first with a blade across the wrist, the second with an arrow loosed, so close she felt the string snap against her fingers. Tigress training met brute authority blow for blow, speed against weight, precision against arrogance. Ilsa fought beside her despite the bruises, every movement sharp with refusal. They did not flee blindly. They moved like they had always moved, together, covering each other's weaknesses, trusting without question. Aysha fought like something unchained, not reckless, relentless. Every strike was fueled by a single, blazing truth. Love freely chosen was worth any cost. Worth blood, worth defiance, worth war. By the time they reached the keep's outer wall, the bells were screaming across the city, panic spilling into the streets below. They dropped into the frantic crowd, temporarily lost amid the rush. They did not look back. They kept their bearing until they reached the city's edge. The river swirled below them as they scaled the city walls. Arrows hissed past them as they climbed, stone biting into their palms. Aysha went first, hauling Ilsa up with hands locked, so tightly their fingers numbed. Together they leapt. The night swallowed them whole. They hit the river hard, the cold a violent shock that ripped the breath from their lungs. The impact burned, disoriented, but the current was strong, and it did not care about kings or walls. It seized them and carried them away from Karth, away from chains and proclamations and forced vows shouted from marble halls. They clung to one another until the city lights vanished behind a bend in the river. When they finally crawled onto the far bank, soaked and shivering, Ilsa laughed, a quiet, disbelieving sound that cracked into something like joy. Aysha pressed her forehead to Ilsa's, both of them trembling, but alive. Days later, they returned to the highlands. The Tigresses gathered as one beneath the open sky. They stood in a wide ring on the high plateau, where the wind carried the scent of pine and ash, and the land fell away toward the distant plains. Blades hung at their sides, scarred, nicked, honest tools of survival rather than symbols of dominance. Faces were drawn with exhaustion, streaked with soot and dried blood, but their eyes burned bright. These were women who had been hunted and had not broken. Word of the rescue had already spread, faster than fear ever could. It traveled through gestures and glances, through the way backs straightened and hands tightened around hilts. It lived in the quiet pride of those who had taught Aysha to fight, and in the fierce hope of those who had once believed escape impossible. A tigress had entered the heart of the enemy's power and returned. Not alone, not defeated. Ilsa stood beside Aysha. Her bruises were healing, fading from angry purples to softer shadows, but nothing in her posture suggested weakness. She stood tall, shoulders squared, chin lifted, not as a victim reclaimed, but as a woman who had endured and refused to be reshaped. Her presence was a living defiance, a reminder of what Marek's rule had failed to steal. When she spoke, her voice carried easily across the gathered circle.
They tried to make an example of us.
In her voice there was no tremor, no apology, just truth laid bare.
They tried to show the world that our choices could be taken, that our bonds could be rewritten by force.
She paused, letting the weight of what she'd said settle.
Let us prove them wrong. Let us stand as one.
This was not a plea. It was a declaration. Silence followed, thick, reverent. The elders exchanged looks across the circle, their faces lined with years of vigilance and restraint. They had survived by caution, by choosing battles carefully, by enduring long enough for the world to look away. Centuries of memory pressed against the moment. Lost sisters, broken camps, near extinctions narrowly escaped. And yet, before them stood the undeniable truth. The code had not failed. It had been tested and answered. One by one, the elders nodded. The motion passed through the circle like a tide. A hand lifted, then another. Blades were drawn and raised high, steel catching the sun until the plateau blazed with light. Voices joined in the old words, the vows spoken since before kings carved borders into land that had never consented to be owned. Words of choice, of refusal, of unity freely given. The Tigresses would not vanish quietly. They would not submit to fear dressed as law, nor to rulers who mistook force for legitimacy. They would fight, not only for survival, but for the right to choose who they loved, who they followed, and who they would never kneel to. Aysha took Ilsa's hand, openly, defiantly, before them all. There was no shame in the gesture, no need for explanation. It was a bond freely chosen, witnessed by those who understood its power. Steel rang as blades struck hilts in approval, a sound like thunder rolling across the highlands. And in that moment, beneath the open sky, surrounded by women who would not be erased, the code lived on. Marek and his followers thought the rescue would end with gratitude, that Aysha would return Ilsa to the tribe, that the Tigresses would retreat once more into their highlands, bruised but quiet. The king's advisors spoke of it as an embarrassment, nothing more, a single failure to be buried beneath proclamations and parades. They were wrong. Stories travel faster than armies. The tale of Karth spread along trade roads and riverbanks, whispered in taverns and spoken aloud in kitchens where women listened with hands stilled over their work. A tigress had walked into the heart of the king's fortress and stolen back what had been taken. Not gold, not secrets. A woman, not rescued by treaty or ransom, but by refusal. In the cities, daughters repeated the story to one another like a spell. In the countryside, wives listened with a sharp, aching hunger. Even among Marek's soldiers, the tale unsettled something long buried. If one woman could defy a king and live, what else had they been taught to believe was impossible? The Tigresses did not hide from the story. They let it burn. Aysha became a symbol, though she never asked to be one. She spoke rarely, but when she did, it was with the same unadorned honesty that had carried her into Karth. She did not call for chaos. She did not promise safety or deliverance. She spoke of choice, of bonds entered freely or not at all, of loyalty that could not be beaten into breaking, of power that required obedience to survive, being unworthy of survival. Others listened. The resistance grew, not as a single army, but as many small fires. Farmers refused levies. Town guards looked the other way. Supply wagons vanished. Prison doors were left unlocked. Women fled forced marriages and found their way to the highlands, where the Tigresses took them in, not as recruits, but as equals who would decide their own path. Marek's answer was with force, as it always had been. His crackdowns were brutal, indiscriminate. Villages burned. Public punishments multiplied. He spoke endlessly of order, while his rule fractured beneath him. The harder he clenched his fist, the more his power slipped through his fingers. And then the Tigresses struck, not as raiders, but as leaders. They coordinated with city cells and rural bands, striking supply depots, liberating prisoners, dismantling the machinery of control piece by piece. Tigress training, discipline without cruelty, strength without domination, proved devastating against an army built on fear and rigid command. Ilsa became a voice of the movement, her survival a living rebuke to Marek's authority. She spoke openly of her attempted forced marriage, naming it for what it was. The shame did not cling to her, it recoiled from her. Women rose, men followed, not out of a need for dominance, but out of recognition that freedom could not be partial and remain stable. The final march on Karth did not look like conquest. It looked like inevitability. The city gates opened from within. Soldiers laid down arms. The bells that once screamed alarms rang instead in disarray, then fell silent altogether. When Marek was dragged from his throne room, there was no crowd demanding blood, only witnesses. He was tried not by a single ruler, but by an assembly drawn from every province he had tried to dominate. His laws were read back to him, his decrees spoken aloud, stripped of ceremony, revealed for the cruelty they had always contained. He was removed from power, not as a martyr, but as a man who had mistaken fear for loyalty and paid the cost. When the dust settled, the Tigresses did not claim the throne. They refused it. Instead, the code was written into the new charter, not as a mandate, but as a protection. Choice was recognized as a right. Forced bonds were outlawed. Consent was named, defined, and defended. The Tigresses were emancipated not as an exception, but as citizens free to live by their code, free to leave it, free to exist without apology. On the day the decree was read aloud in the highlands, Aysha stood among her people, not above them. Ilsa stood at her side, fingers entwined. They had not set out to start a revolution. They had set out to save one another. But sometimes, that is enough to change the world. And long after Marek's name faded into footnotes and cautionary tales, the story of the Tigress who refused to let love be stolen was still told, quietly, fiercely, as proof that choice, once defended, has a way of teaching others to defend it too. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. It would mean the world to us.